Welcome back to SBIFF.
Thank you.
How does it feel to be back here?
It feels great, and I just love that because I've been in the area for so long, 45 years, I think, and to see every year it just gets bigger and bigger.
And John, talk about the importance of SBIFF to our community. As you said, you guys are locals.
Well, we were here the other night for the Leonardo tribute, Sean Penn and Benicio. It was amazing. It was just so cool. You know, I grew up with those guys. Sean and I are the same age. You know, when I decided to be an actor in the early 80s, that was a guy that was just coming on the scene. So to sit here now and, you know, see Leonardo from a little boy to a full-grown man, that was cool. Yeah, man. Look, we're at the beautiful Arlington Theater tonight, and I always say, once these theaters go away, they don't rebuild them. They're like live music venues. Once your live music venue turns into a coffee shop, that's one less venue. So I love that. Look, all these people are coming out. Last night you had a lot of rain, but people still came out. They're coming out. They're supporting not just the actors, but the movies as a whole. And we try to go to the theater and see as many as we can. So, you know, there will be a time in the future when things like this probably won't matter that much to people because they're all going to be watching on the phones, and theaters will be gaps. You know, there'll be gaps or Starbucks.
Yeah.
But while these are still here, look at this beautiful building. We got to do whatever we can to support it. And for the Santa Barbara area, yeah, man, we need all the love we can, especially here on State Street. Bo's been here since '79. I've been here for 25 years now, and you know, stores they've had to put a lot of things in the windows because, you know, people are leaving for various reasons, and we just gotta get business back. Did you ever see Tombstone?
Yes.
That was my favorite thing in the world. Tombstone, Powers Booth, Kurt Russell, Val Kilmer.
So
I mean,
cool.
that was my most favorite thing of all that I've ever done.
And Bo,
Yes.
you have spent so much of your life as an animal activist.
Yes.
Can you talk about your passions?
Oh, it's endless, and it's funny. There's the entertainment world, and when you become something in it, it just opens doors to anything that interests you. So I'm interested in animals, in the environment, and all these places, and I get to spend time with the people who are doing all the hard work and the experts and people who are my heroes. So it's been a very blessed experience, and it's wonderful when someone really fantastic in conservation says, "Hey, Bo, can you help me?"
Oh boy, well, we really appreciate all that you do, all that you both do for
Thank
cinema, for activism, for
Yeah.
everything. It's a treat to have you here tonight.
No,
Go
this
see
is really.
Tombstone. Watch Tombstone if you haven't
No,
seen
this
it.
is really, it's really special here because I've been lucky. I still go to film festivals all over the world, and to know that we have such a great one right here where we live and people support the entertainment industry.
Absolutely. Thank you, John. Thank you, Bo. Enjoy tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
She became something unforgettable, and in doing so, unlocked doors to a world full of possibility. In 1979, a single moment changed everything. A woman running along a beach suddenly turned into a global sensation. Her image etched into pop culture almost overnight. And yet, just as quickly as she rose, she seemed to vanish. So what really happened to Bo Derek? And why did she step away from the spotlight? Born Mary Kathleen Collins on November 20, 1956, in Long Beach, California, she was surrounded by influences that quietly pointed toward fame. Her father, Paul Collins, worked as an executive for Hobie Cat, a company known for its sleek catamarans, while her mother, Norma, built a career as a hairstylist and makeup artist. Among her clients was none other than actress Anne Margaret, a connection to Hollywood glamour that would prove more significant than anyone could have predicted. Growing up in Los Angeles' South Bay, Mary wasn't the typical rule-following teenager. She attended Narbonne High School in Harbor City, but classrooms couldn't compete with the pull of the ocean. Restless and searching for something more, she often skipped school, hitchhiking her way to the beach, chasing a freedom that, in many ways, foreshadowed the unpredictable path her life was about to take. She was always pulled more by the warmth of the California sun than by anything waiting inside a classroom. Years later, during a 1985 appearance on Late Night with David Letterman, Bo Derek recalled it with a laugh, admitting she once skipped an entire month of school, got caught, returned, and had just begun to enjoy it again, when everything changed. A film opportunity appeared, and just like that, the fragile routine of teenage life was gone. She was only 16 when she stepped into an audition that would alter the course of her life. The project was led by John Derek, a man who would soon become the most influential and controversial figure in her story. It was 1972, and he was preparing a romantic drama to be filmed in Greece, a project that would remain out of the public eye for years before eventually being released as fantasies. For Mary Kathleen, it wasn't just another audition. It was the beginning of something far bigger and far more complicated than she could have imagined. At the time, John Derek was 46 years old, a seasoned figure in Hollywood with a career stretching back through the 1950s and 60s. He had appeared in films like All the King's Men, Rogues of Sherwood Forest, The Ten Commandments, and Exodus, before gradually shifting his focus behind the camera into directing and photography. Off-screen, his life was just as notable. He was married to Linda Evans, who would later captivate television audiences as Crystal Carrington on Dynasty. Despite all of that history, it was this moment, this casting decision, that would mark the beginning of a new chapter. Mary Kathleen got the role, and with it, stepped into a life that would soon captivate the world. She traveled to Greece for the film, but what unfolded there went far beyond the script. During the shoot, a relationship began, one that would soon become as controversial as it was life-defining. Bo Derek was just 16. John Derek was 30 years older, married, and deeply embedded in Hollywood. What started as a connection quickly turned into something much more complicated, raising questions that would follow them for years. By 1974, when Linda Evans filed for divorce, the situation had already escalated. To avoid California's legal restrictions, John took Mary Kathleen to Germany, where they could remain together without interference. They stayed in Europe, out of reach and out of sight, until she turned 18. Only then did they return to the United States, marrying on June 10, 1976. She was 19, he was 49. Years later, Bo would reflect on that period with striking honesty. In a 2016 interview with Interview magazine, she admitted feeling deep regret, acknowledging the pain caused, especially to Linda Evans, whom she described as someone she had admired and cared for. It was a rare moment of vulnerability about a chapter often defined by scandal. From that marriage came not just a partnership, but a complete reinvention. She merged her earlier stage name, Bo Shane, with her new identity and became Bo Derek. But the transformation didn't stop at a name. John took meticulous control over her image, bleaching her hair blonde and shaping every detail of her appearance, crafting the persona that the world would soon come to recognize almost instantly. For years, John Derek had been photographing striking women, refining a very specific visual style, one that blended glamour, control, and careful construction. With Bo Derek, that vision became intensely focused. He wasn't experimenting anymore. He was building toward something deliberate. And within just 3 years, the world would finally see exactly what he had been creating. Before that moment arrived, though, there was a quieter introduction. In 1977, director Michael Anderson cast Bo in a small supporting role in Orca, the Killer Whale, a film clearly riding the E of success left by Jaws 2 years earlier. Her role was brief and memorable for the wrong reasons. Her character meets a swift and brutal fate early in the story, courtesy of the film's deadly namesake. The movie itself wasn't taken too seriously, and it didn't bring her immediate recognition, but it marked an important milestone. Her first released film under the name Bo Derek, placing her, however briefly, on the cinematic map. What looked like quiet, uneventful years between that film and her eventual breakthrough were anything but idle. Behind the scenes, John Derek was methodically shaping her image. Through countless photo sessions, he crafted the exact look and mood that would soon define her public identity. Every pose, every detail, every frame was part of a larger plan. It was the culmination of years of his own artistic evolution, now fully concentrated on one subject. And when the world finally saw the result, it wouldn't just notice. It would be impossible to look away. Looking back, Bo Derek has described those years not as passive shaping, but as a kind of creative partnership. She learned how to exist in front of the camera, how light hit her face, how subtle movements translated through a lens, how to become an image people couldn't ignore. Whether that dynamic is seen as guidance or control often depends on perspective. But one thing is certain, by the end of it, she was ready. So when Blake Edwards began searching for the perfect woman to center his next film, Bo Derek wasn't just another hopeful. She was the result of years of careful preparation. The project was a romantic comedy titled 10, and Edwards, already established with films like Breakfast at Tiffany's, Days of Wine and Roses, and the Pink Panther series, wasn't chasing validation. He was crafting something specific. At the heart of 10 was Dudley Moore, playing a middle-aged composer spiraling through a personal crisis, until he catches a fleeting glimpse of a woman who completely consumes his thoughts. That woman needed to feel almost unreal, like an idea more than a person. And when Bo Derek stepped into that role, she wasn't just acting. She embodied exactly what the film demanded. What happened next would turn a single scene into one of the most iconic moments in Hollywood history. For the story to truly work, that central figure had to feel almost unreal, someone who could instantly justify obsession. Bo Derek ultimately secured the role of Jenny, but not before a competitive search that included names like Melanie Griffith, Heather Thomas, and Tanya Roberts. When 10 finally premiered in October 1979, it didn't just open. It exploded into the cultural conversation. And then there was the moment. The scene that refused to fade with time. Bo Derek running along a Malibu beach toward Dudley Moore, wearing a skin-toned swimsuit, her hair styled in tight cornrows. Shot in slow motion, bathed in sunlight, it struck audiences with a kind of cinematic lightning. Within weeks, that image was everywhere. Magazine covers, television parodies, endless conversations. People didn't just remember the film, they remembered her. The movie itself was both a critical and commercial success, but Bo Derek became its defining symbol. She earned a Golden Globe nomination for New Star of the Year, a clear signal that Hollywood was paying attention. She ultimately lost the award to Bette Midler for The Rose, but by then it hardly mattered. Overnight, she had become one of the most recognizable women in the world. An image, a phenomenon, and a presence that seemed impossible to ignore. At just 22 years old, Bo Derek became the most talked-about woman in America. But the image that made her famous carried more than beauty. It carried cultural weight. The now iconic cornrow hairstyle she wore in 10 had deep roots in African American tradition, something that wasn't widely discussed at the time. In 1979, it was embraced by mainstream audiences with fascination, but in the years that followed, it also sparked ongoing conversations about cultural appropriation, debates that continue to resurface even today. Fame arrived fast. Too fast. After 10, Bo was suddenly everywhere. Magazine covers, interviews, television appearances. It was the kind of overnight visibility that leaves no room to process, no time to prepare. And by her own admission, she wasn't ready. She had no agent guiding her choices, no publicist shaping her image, no legal team protecting her interests. She described herself as completely blindsided by the machinery of fame that surrounded her. Into that vacuum stepped John Derek, not just as her husband, but as the dominant force behind her career. While he had always been involved, his influence now became absolute. After the success of 10, he took control of every project, directing each film she appeared in. What followed wasn't a continuation of her meteoric rise, but something far more complicated. and for many watching at the time, increasingly difficult to ignore. The momentum of fame carried people into her next project, A Change of Seasons in 1980. Directed by People and featuring People and People, Beau played a college student entangled in an affair with her much older married professor. The film earned modest box office returns, but critics largely ignored Beau's performance, praising only MacLaine and Hopkins, leaving her notices lukewarm and dismissive. Then came a series of films orchestrated by People, each one designed around Beau as the central spectacle. In 1981, Tarzan, the ape man, cast her as Jane Parker, shifting the narrative focus entirely onto her. The movie emphasized her revealing jungle costumes and nude sequences, and critics did not hold back in their scathing assessments. Yet despite the reviews, audiences showed up. $35 million at the box office secured the film a spot among the top 15 earners of the year. Beau's fame was undeniable, but so was the backlash. She became the inaugural co-recipient of the Golden Raspberry Award for Worst Actress, sharing the dubious honor with People, whose own film that year had similarly faltered. By the time Bolero arrived in 1984, the pattern was clear. Commercially viable, visually striking, and critically derided, a combination that defined the next phase of her career. By the mid-1980s, People had fully taken control of People's career, writing, directing, and photographing Bolero in 1984. The film followed a young woman traveling the world after college in search of an ideal lover, but its explicit sexual content earned it an X rating, effectively barring it from mainstream theaters. Critics demolished it, and the film became shorthand for Hollywood excess at its most indulgent. At that year's Golden Raspberry Awards, Bolero swept the major categories: Worst Picture, Worst Director, Worst Screenplay, Worst New Star, and Worst Actress, marking Beau's second Razzie in just 3 years. 5 years later, in 1989, Beau returned in Ghosts Can't Do It, with John Derek once again at the helm. She played a widow whose deceased husband returns as a ghost to help her find a younger replacement. The movie is perhaps most remembered today for a cameo by known_celebrity. "I didn't realize I valued my privacy so much," People once reflected, a quiet acknowledgement of how her life had been reshaped by fame. Looking back, a pattern emerges that is hard to ignore. Every project directed by People was meticulously constructed around Beau's physical appearance. The stories were minimal, the characters underdeveloped, and critics noticed, often with growing impatience, that there was little substance beyond the image on screen. What these films rarely offered was the chance to see whether Beau Derek could deliver more than what her roles demanded. Box office numbers complicated the narrative. Audiences kept coming. Tarzan, the ape man, made real money, and the public fascination that had erupted with 10 lingered. Yet each subsequent film, panned by critics, slowly eroded the goodwill she had initially built, with nothing new inserted to sustain or expand her reputation. Even so, Beau has always approached those years without bitterness. In interviews, she has described the work as a willing collaboration, a creative partnership with John Derek rather than a story of victimhood. She never framed herself as someone forced into the spotlight. She acknowledges the choices she made and the vision they both pursued, even when the results were flawed, controversial, or misunderstood. But Beau Derek also recognizes the cost of working almost exclusively with one director. Her husband, People. That collaboration, while intensely creative, effectively funneled her career into a single lane. Hollywood had already made its judgment. Beau Derek was a striking visual presence above all else, and the industry stubbornly reinforced that image. Once that conclusion was set, scripts that arrived rarely challenged it. They confirmed it. There's a lingering question of what might have been different. When People cast her in 10, he saw something beyond her appearance. The film gave her a character full of warmth and humor, allowing audiences to connect with more than just her image. Yet the projects that followed never tested whether that appeal could translate into other roles or narratives. Instead, each subsequent John Derek film doubled down on the same visual and sensational elements that had sparked attention and controversy from the very start. The aspects of her screen presence that were genuinely interesting went largely unexplored, overshadowed by the film's shallow constructions. The opening that 10 created in 1979 was real, powerful, and promising. What the years that followed failed to do was build on it in any meaningful or lasting way, leaving a legacy defined more by spectacle than by substance. After Ghosts Can't Do It, people's presence on screen grew sporadic and decidedly lower profile. She appeared in the television film Hot Chocolate in 1992 and Shattered Image in 1994, followed by Woman of Desire, a straight-to-video thriller that same year. These projects reflected a period far removed from the high-profile attention she had once commanded, a career operating without the momentum of mainstream visibility. Then came a brief return to a wider audience with Tommy Boy in 1995. The Chris Farley and David Spade comedy was a genuine box office hit, and Beau played a cunning stepmother with evident enjoyment. Audiences responded warmly, even as she received a Golden Raspberry nomination for Worst Supporting Actress, though she did not win. Beyond the Razzie, the film had real distribution and reached a new generation of moviegoers, introducing her to audiences who had grown up long after the lightning-fast fame of 1979. The late 1990s saw a quieter rhythm in her career, with small television roles. 4 guest episodes on Wind on Water in 1998 and a spot on The Drew Carey Show in 1999. It was a time of lower stakes and quieter years. Then, in May 1998, people passed away, closing a defining chapter in her life. The end of an era, yet Beau has recalled their partnership with reflection and affection, emphasizing that their collaboration and their marriage was always by mutual choice. On May 22, 1998, people passed away from cardiovascular disease at their home in Santa Maria, California. He was 71 years old, and their marriage had spanned 22 years, a partnership that began when people was just 16, traveling to Greece. From that moment forward, John had been the central figure in her life. Her husband, her director, her photographer, the man who shaped her image and guided nearly every professional decision she made. Despite how their story began, and regardless of the controversies surrounding their films, their bond was long, genuine, and deeply felt. After his death, Beau spoke openly about having no desire to pursue romance again. She focused on her horses, her Santa Ynez property, her charitable causes, and the private life she had painstakingly built, choosing contentment over reinvention. She wasn't seeking change, but life had other plans. In 2002, talent agent People called, needing a companion for his Oscars party. He suggested Beau attend with one of his clients, People, known for Northern exposure and, more recently, as Aiden on Sex and the City. That invitation marked the beginning of an unexpected new chapter in her life, one that would gradually pull her back into the world of companionship and connection. When People met People for that Oscars party, she told him she hadn't dated anyone in 5 years. He was 5 years younger, and neither expected much from the evening. Yet the connection was immediate and it lasted. Years later, Beau described it to USA Today. "He makes me laugh all the time. He's full of life, full of joy. I became attracted to him, and I still am." For nearly 2 decades, they were partners without the official title of marriage. Private, content, and unconcerned with outside opinions. In a 2015 interview with Entertainment Tonight, Beau explained their choice plainly. "We don't have children and we're not young, so there isn't that pressure or need to get married." Life moved quietly, their companionship steady and fulfilling. Then the pandemic shifted things. In December 2020, Beau Derek and John Corbett finally married in an intimate ceremony with only close friends and family present. The news was shared publicly the following August, when Corbett told his friend Jerry O'Connell on a talk show, "We didn't want 2020 to be that thing everybody looks back on and hated." It was a private celebration of a long, enduring connection finally formalized, a quiet, joyful chapter after years of contented partnership. Today, People lives a life that looks nothing like Hollywood. She and People reside on a ranch in Santa Barbara, California, surrounded by horses, German shepherds, and a daily rhythm dictated by the animals rather than the entertainment world. Long before her acting career slowed, Beau had quietly been building a life rooted in something far more enduring than fame: horses. Her passion for them runs deep. In 2002, she published her autobiography, Riding Lessons, declaring, "Everything that matters in life I learned from horses." Over the years, she has cared for more than 30 horses on her Santa Ynez ranch, speaking with precise knowledge about breeds, behavior, and care. It is not the language of celebrity promotion. It is the language of someone who has spent decades in barns, learning from and living with these animals. Beau's dedication also extends into advocacy. She has been a tireless campaigner against the slaughter of American horses for meat export to Europe. As a spokesperson for the organization, she lobbied Congress for years, walking the hallways of Senate office buildings, meeting legislators individually, and making her case one vote at a time. It is a work of patience, persistence, and quiet impact, a far cry from the flash of cameras, yet one of the most meaningful chapters of her life. By 2006, People had become deeply immersed in advocacy work, and a Washington Post profile followed her through a day of congressional meetings. Her approach was refreshingly direct. "I am not a member of any animal rights organization. I am a big red meat eater. I live in cattle country. Europe. Brand. But as Americans, we don't eat our horses." In 2008, her commitment earned her an appointment by California Governor People as Commissioner and Vice Chair of the California Horse